Welcome to the Rejection channel. Today's teaching, Accepted in the Beloved 2, builds on our previous discussion of God's radical love for us. Today, we will explore the depths of God's love and learn how it can help us deal with rejection in our lives. But before we go further, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, show us some love, and give us a thumbs up. Also, share this awesomeness with others so they can be blessed as well. Thank you. I would like to start today's teaching with a personal story. You see, over the years, I've been blessed with many beautiful experiences with the Lord. I've had encounters. I'm not saying I've had visions per se, but I've had encounters with the Lord while studying my Bible and also hearing His voice. And the one I'm about to share with you today is the one that is the most defining for me. Well, it was in the year 2020, and of course that year was a very defining year for everyone. But it was also the year that I lost my dad. Like most people who lose a loved one, the grief doesn't exactly set in until a few days after, where they begin to feel the absence of that person. And in one moment, they realize that the person is gone. There's a finality to it. They realize that the person is gone forever, or let's say for the period of time they'll be on earth. And for me, that moment came on the eve of my dad's burial. All of a sudden, in that moment, I felt his absence, and then I just realized that, oh my God, my dad is gone. And as I lay on the bed to sleep that day, which I couldn't, memories of my childhood began to come to me all of a sudden. Like I began to remember, memories of my dad and how he would drive me to cut our hair and all those things. And while those memories began to flow back, tears began to flow down my eyes as I lay on that bed. In just a short moment, I was overwhelmed with emotions, and I began to feel the pain of my dad's absence in my heart. And while I was there crying and in that state of pain and grief, things didn't get better. Actually, another realization hit me. It struck me so deep in my heart. It was a deep pain. It felt like a knife in my chest. And that was the realization that my mother was also dead. You see, my mother had died many years before my father died in 2020. But it just occurred to me that day that finally, Daniel, you are an orphan. Well, in that moment, I felt a feeling that I cannot fully describe, but all I can say is I felt alone, I felt forsaken, and I also felt abandoned. And it was a very, very painful feeling. But while I stayed there and I was crying, sobbing quietly, because as a guy, you don't want to cry so everybody would hear you cry, that sort of thing. While I stayed there and I was sobbing quietly on my pillow, I heard a voice gently speak to my heart. And it's a voice that I have learned to recognize over the years. It's a voice I know all too well. And it was the voice of the Father. And it was so full of love and comfort. Well, he called my name. He said, Daniel. And the next words I heard were the most powerful words I've ever heard in my life. He said, I have no orphans. Just thinking about it right now still brings a level of warmth and comfort to me. And I can remember how I felt that night. It was life-changing. You see, God really has no orphans. There are too many people all around the world, everywhere, who are still living like orphans because they just can't come to terms with the fact that the Father has opened the door of His heart for all of us to come in. I believe strongly that the day the world realizes this truth is the day we will truly know the meaning of love. One of the most profound experiences in a parent's life is when they cradle their newborn babies in their arms for the very first time and they witness the miracle of life. You see, for many fathers, especially fathers, this moment marks the day their lives take a remarkable turn for the better. Let me explain. You see, in these moments, they realize something. They realize that they've left the arena of boyhood and teenagehood and, bachelorhood, and they've stepped into a role of fatherhood. And this ignites in them a dormant aspect of their masculinity that only fathers know and experience. Well, parenthood, unlike how many people today have described it, and I have to say this, you watch videos on the internet and you see people acting like though having children is a crime or is a very terrible thing. Parenthood actually brings an unparalleled joy, and it allows us to partake in a joy that we as humans have the privilege to share with God the Father. Just as earthly parents find ultimate delight and purpose in the birth of their children, God's greatest pleasure and purpose is in the birth of His own spiritual children. I'd like us to read some verses in the Bible that just illustrates this fact very well. I'm going to read from the Good News version, and I want us to read from the book of Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4 to 5. Here's what it says. Even before the world was made, God had already chosen us to be His through our union with Christ, so that we would be holy and without fault before Him. Because of His love, God had already decided that through Jesus Christ, He would make us His children. This was His pleasure and His purpose. The verses we just read hold profound significance. According to the Apostle Paul, only one thing informs the eternal decisions of the Father, and that is His adoption of us as His children. You see, in the King James version of the same verse, it reads a little bit differently. The same meaning, but it has a different connotation. I want us to read out of the King James version. Having predestined us unto the adoption of children by Jesus Christ to Himself, according to the good pleasure of His will. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 5. The term adoption, which was used only by the Apostle Paul, and its significance should actually not be confused with the contemporary legal usage of the word, the way we understand adoption in our modern day. You see, this is very important to note as a Bible student. Many times, the Bible and the setting in which the Bible was written is in the ancient Eastern tradition. And we, in the Western world or in the modern world, our mode of education, our form of education is Western education, which comes from a Greek origin. So the Greeks actually have the foundation of Western education. That's why most of our philosophies are from Aristotle, Socrates, and the likes. We cannot use a Grecian ideology or a Grecian understanding to understand the Eastern or Semitic concepts. So the way Paul explained this is in the Eastern practice of the term. And in the Eastern practice of adoption, it entailed a couple adopting a servant or a slave that was in their house, who under normal circumstances would never have been able to inherit their estate upon their death. But instead, through the act of adoption, the individual will then be elevated from the status of a slave to the status of a son or an heir upon the couple's passing. Very, very interesting, right? Well, this actually sheds light on Paul's declaration in a well-known verse we know from the book of Romans chapter 8. And here is what it says: "For the spirit that God has given you does not make you slaves and cause you to be afraid. Instead, the Spirit makes you God's children, and by the Spirit's power we cry out, 'Father, my Father.'" Romans chapter 8 verse 15, the Good News Version. A vivid illustration of this concept can be found in Abraham's servant Eliezer. He was entitled to an inheritance despite not being Abraham's natural born son. We find that in Genesis chapter 15, where Abraham was speaking to God about it. You see, this is a picture of God's adoption. God's ultimate delight and his purpose lies in transforming those people who were once completely excluded from his family and making us into beloved sons. My friends, in this way, God has democratized love. We can find several insights about adoption that are worth noting as we look into the verses of Ephesians chapter 1, as we read earlier. The first of which is that we are chosen. This revelation is our first glimpse of the acceptance of God which extends to us. Now, God himself has personally selected us to be a part of his divine family. What an incredible privilege. Secondly, we're not just chosen, but we're chosen to be blameless and holy. Now, this reminds us that God's choice of us wasn't based on our already existing holiness or righteousness, but rather it is based on his purpose, his eternal purpose to transform us, making us blameless and holy through his own grace. And thirdly, we're chosen from the foundation of the world. From the dawn of time itself, the Father has orchestrated our destiny. You see, every event, every twist and every turn in what we call history was only directed towards the fulfillment of his choice to embrace us as sons. See, the Father's commitment to us has spanned through the ages and has transcended through time into eternity. This love is unfathomable, and it is actually beyond description. God's deliberate intent to adopt us as children is the most compelling evidence of his love and acceptance for us. Guess what? We are the beloved of God. In the face of this profound truth we have discussed throughout this teaching today, there is a sobering reality. Despite the Father's incredible act of defeating death through Jesus Christ to win us over, many individuals have chosen to reject his love and his grace. See, today, if you're listening to me, wherever you are, whenever you're listening to this, if you're hearing what I'm saying today and something in your heart is resonating with my words, and you know that over the years you have fought back this love that has fought so hard to win you, I want to invite you to know the Father and his love for you. I'm very certain that this is the best decision you'd ever make in your life. I'd like for you to say a prayer with me today, wherever you are. I'd love you to put your hand on your chest as a form of surrender and say these words after me. Say, "Dear Father, I acknowledge your love for me by sending Jesus to the earth to pay the price for me. Today, I open the door of my heart to you and I receive your eternal life. Give me a new heart. Lord, make me new. From today, I acknowledge that you are my Father and I am your child." Amen. We would love to help you navigate this new journey you started with God. So kindly refer to the description. We've put a link there, or you can contact us with the email provided in the description as well. We have reached the end of today's teaching, Accepted in the Beloved. I sincerely hope that you found great inspiration from it. Next week, we will continue on this topic, and it promises to be worth your time. Please remember to show your appreciation by liking this video or by hitting the subscribe button, and don't forget to also hit that notification bell so you can stay updated and not miss out on any of our upcoming teachings. You can help us to share this video so we can also be a blessing to your loved ones as well. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Stay blessed.